Welcome to the Develop Leadership Podcast, where we seek to explore the art and the science of developing your leadership capacity. Every month, we want to raise thought-provoking ideas and equip you to be an investor of the influence you carry. If you're ready to journey with us, then it's time to develop.
Welcome back, my fellow learners and leaders. This is Tony Villafane coming at you with another episode of the Develop Leadership Podcast. Well, we've been going on a 5-episode journey unpacking the 5 marks of a healthy leader. The past 4 episodes, we have covered following first, serving always, cultivating clarity, and valuing results and relationships. And at Gateway Church, we have put a stake in the ground over what are some of the irreducible minimum qualities that a leader should carry and possess. And so today we are covering the final mark, which is humble confidence. And to give you a little bit of a teaser and a taste of what this trait is like, here's something for you. Healthy leaders have an intentional balance of both being humble and confident. They are poised with a confidence in their giftings and abilities while still being open to constructive criticism, feedback, and advice from those around them. They are open to correction while they are also bold in their convictions. They have an accurate view of their self-worth that doesn't dip too low or doesn't raise too high. They allow others to encourage them without dismissing it, and they also don't let it inflame their ego. They have an accurate view of where their strengths end and their weaknesses begin. They can discern when they need to be more flexible or firm in decision-making. They surround themselves with people who aren't just their yes men or women, but those that will speak truth with radical candor. They live with a tough skin, but a soft heart. And finally, they are eager to be ever-evolving, learning leaders. So to help unpack this trait and this quality, I've invited guest and friend, Sandi Wrigley. Sandi, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, Tony. Thanks for having me. It is a true honor to be here.
It is doubly an honor to have you here today, and I am really, really excited to dialogue with you and to unpack this, I would even call it paradoxical trait, if you will, that is humble confidence. Even someone hearing that for the first time may be like, that doesn't even make sense on the same playing field. Right. How does that work? So we will unpack the paradox. But before we do that, please just tell me a little bit about yourself so our listeners and viewers have an understanding of who you are, when you are, why you are, how you are, whatever makes sense.
Well, to know me is to know that I love me some Jesus.
Yes.
And I also am a wife of a critter of 15 years, and I feel like I need to take a time out and explain his name.
That you're not married to an animal.
No,
Great.
like,
Okay.
or an imaginary friend.
Okay.
His real name is Christopher, and his nickname's been Critter since he was a baby. So
Great. Thanks for the context for all of our people.
Sure. So if you see him, call him Critter. He likes it. So married 15 years. I am a proud mama bear to our 2 kids. Leighton is 9. Renly is 7. They keep us busy. And outside of that, I am an instructional coach for a cyber school, and I'm entering my 14th year as a cyber school educator.
Okay.
So that's a little about me.
What classes do you do over the cyber schooling?
Well, since I switched to being an instructional coach, I work one-on-one with the teachers.
Okay,
So
got it.
I kind of work with them, I lead them, I help them in areas that they need to help their students reach their fullest potential.
Got it.
So,
Very good.
yeah.
Love it. So good. Well, once again, I said that I'm excited, and there is a little bit of personal excitement on my end about this topic because of some of my story that I'm hopefully we'll be able to share maybe a little bit of that as we unpack it. But as we begin, let me just ask you this: is there any type of comedic moment that comes to mind when let's say you tried to act in humility or you tried to act in confidence and it just didn't land? So you can go humility, you can go confidence, whichever one you feel like going towards. They just didn't land the way you intended.
All right, I'm just gonna out myself, and
Do it.
I'm gonna embarrass myself, but I'm going for it. Leighton had like an American Ninja Warrior party. You've seen the show before,
Yes.
right? Okay. So it was like 2 years ago, and they ran through the course, and there was a little break, and the instructor guy was like, "Hey, Mom, why don't you go through?" And Leighton's like, "Yeah, Mommy, do it." And I'm thinking in my head, don't do it. You're not an athlete. Don't do it, but don't let your son down. So I was like, all right, you got this. So I took on that moment of confidence and I started through the course, and it came to a part where it was like a hanging rope. and you had to hang like a Tarzan swing. And I looked at the instructor and I was like, what do I do with this? And he was like, just hang on and go. And I'm like, okay, well, no, that's not what you needed to do. I hung on and I went flat on my back like a pancake in front of everyone. And it was so embarrassing. So my confidence quickly went down and my humility was like, okay, own it, swallow it, get up. And I finished the course, but I was surely embarrassed.
Now, here's the real question. Have you ever tried it again?
No.
No?
No. Are you insane? No.
I mean, I'm slightly insane, yes. But one day.
One day. That's my goal.
I think the Parksburg Point has one of those.
All right, maybe you'll come with
like
me.
little kid version of a Ninja Warrior course. Yeah, that's great.
That's my goal in life. I'll let you know if it ever happens.
Amazing. Waiting on pins and needles. So, talking about humble confidence, why is it important to intentionally live in the reality that both humility and confidence are critical for long-term leadership impact?
So I'll be honest, your questions were thinkers, and I appreciate these.
You're so welcome.
Because I was like, oh, they're really making me think. But what stood out to me in this question when I answered it was, when you're being a leader, right, it's not about puffing up your chest. It's not about making, like I'm better than you. It's about being chosen to fulfill a role and doing it in a way that allows those around you, those on your team, to feel empowered. Yeah, and sometimes I question myself, how can I call myself a leader if I'm not leading people? Right? If I'm only leading myself, but I'm not taking the time to lead those around me, how am I truly a leader? Yeah. So I've also learned, like when working one-on-one with my teachers, it's being a leader is being vulnerable. It's being real. Yeah. It's being, I'm a human too. Like, even though I'm in a leadership role, I'm still learning alongside with you. And I feel as though like that goes a long way for me.
Well, what I think is super, super cool is what you just said pairs really, really well with the serve always mark that we had just talked about a few episodes ago with Barbara Rank, and how you just said, I can't just like lead myself, I need to lead others as well. Where the serve always mark, we unpacked how you need to serve yourself, like in terms of self-care, you can only lead others as far as you've led yourself. Correct. And so it's not a either or, it's a both and. You need to be at a humble posture where you can step back and say, okay, how am I tending to myself, my body, my mentality, and so on and so forth, before I lead others, while also you got to get your butt out there and lead people too as a leader, because that is what a leader does. Precisely. And so to be able to have both of those together is really cool and really is really needed. What does it look like when there is an unhealthy balance of confidence with not enough humility? What would you say to that?
So I personally think when there's an unhealthy balance of confidence, it's doing things for the wrong reason, right? If you're going to let your confidence just outweigh everything else, like, then you're not in it for the reason that you should be. Yeah. And I've been too confident in my abilities. Like, this whole process has been humbling for me, because I'm like, you've been there. You've been too confident in your abilities, too confident and not being able to see the bigger picture of what I was there for. We all need recognition, right? Like, let's be real.
Sure.
It's real. It's true. But I found myself sometimes, like, if I'm leading an event here at church or I'm doing something for work, like, it was my need for recognition that drove my efforts. And that, when I stood back and I thought about it, I was like, hold on, you're allowing your confidence in yourself to outweigh. So I was busy lifting myself up, lifting my need to be just a leader and recognized, and it got in the way of what was important.
Can I be honest with you?
Sure.
Speaking of doing things for the wrong reasons, literally just a month ago, I was with a group of people, and there was a leader pouring into us, giving a good training session, and they were about to step into a bigger opportunity to lead other people. And I thought to myself, man, wouldn't it be so cool if I took a moment to say, hey, can I pray for you before you go off and do other leadership stuff and Jesus-y stuff? And I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to wait for the moment right before he's about to go. And I'll say, hey, can I pray? And then we'll pause. Well, I didn't. Because the next moment in my mind and my heart was, Tony, why are you doing that? Are you doing that so that you can get recognized by that main leader person? Or are you also looking to get recognized by all the other people? Oh, look how spiritual he is. And it was a rare moment where I told myself, and if I was having an outer body moment, like someone else was doing this, I would say, okay, maybe that's a moment not to pray. Right. Like, I don't think that I would frequently give advice of don't pray. But I was too confident in that moment. And I had to, by the grace of God, had to humble myself and be like, no, your heart's not in the right place of why you want to pray for that person, so don't do it. And so doing things for the wrong reason, dear Lord, it happens more frequently than we would care to admit.
It's true. And like the situation that you spoke of, like I have found myself in that situation, but it wasn't necessarily asking to pray. It's more or less just like being bold enough to mention God in a conversation or in passing. But I'm like, Sand, self-check. Like, are you doing it so people are like, oh, she is a stellar Christian? Or are you doing it because you want to be a beacon for him? And it's like more often than not, it's like, well, I just want people to think I'm a stellar Christian, when in my heart I'm like, you need a self-check.
Well, let me go ahead for the second time now and bring up Barbara Rank's episode of Serve Always, because she said something that really did challenge me in a profound way. She said, are you looking to do stuff with a servant mentality or a savior mentality? And though I understand those concepts, but paired together as poignantly as she did, I was like, huh. So for you to say, as Christians, as Jesus followers, are we doing these things out of a savior complex, or are we doing these things out of a true servant mind? So I think it's very easy for people to relatively think about, okay, what does an unhealthy balance look like of confidence over not enough humility? But let's reverse it. What does it look like to have an unhealthy balance of humility with not enough confidence?
So humility is a good thing until it's not.
Say more.
Okay, hear me out. So I think an overabundance of humility with no confidence in the skills God has provided for us can lead to apathy or non-action. And let me go on that for a second.
Please.
So if that's the mindset we're taking, right? We're taking on this mindset of like, I don't have the confidence, but I know God gave me these skills, but I'm not going to act on those skills. So it's going to then turn to us hiding. It's not just us, me, right? Like me, like I'm going to hide. I'm going to hide my abilities. I'm going to share my gifts. I'm not going to, share them with anybody. And then what happens in turn is I'm not growing the church. I'm not growing his kingdom because I have a false sense of righteousness. And what does that mean? So I could tell myself, well, Sand, like you're doing it and you're doing it well to be humble. Like congratulations, pat on the back, you're doing it. When in fact, I'm kind of being selfish. Yeah. If you think of it that way, right? Like I'm being selfish not to have the confidence to act.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of throwing myself a pity party, like, does that?
Yes.
So when I was writing this out and I was talking through these things with Critter, and I was like, oh, good gravy. Like, how often have I done this?
Yeah.
Where God is calling me to do something and with the gifts and abilities he's given me, but I'm too busy saying, no, I'm going to be humble. I'm going to let somebody else do it.
Yeah.
Then what happens?
You're not the one doing it. That's what happens.
And not only that, but maybe it's just nothing's coming from it, and I'm not doing what I need to grow his kingdom the way he wants me to.
Well, in fact, the matter is God's going to do it whether we say yes or no. Like it's his plan, his will, his sovereignty. So he invites us into it. He wants us to, it's a humbling realization. He wants us a part of his processes and kingdom work. But God's going to do what God's going to do, whether we are bumps on the log or not. And a swinging of humility that doesn't have enough confidence, I agree with you. It's this sense of no confidence in skills, in what God believes in you that you can do, what other people believe in you that you can do, and in action that one takes. And so, yeah, I think that's something we're going to unpack a little bit more later. But if I could ask this question around feedback and criticism, if you will. How do you cultivate confidence specifically in your abilities while also being able to handle feedback, handle criticism about your abilities? As someone says something to you that is completely true or completely false, whatever it may be, how do you cultivate that type of confidence in being still receptive?
I mean, can we say heavy question? Like, it is, feedback's hard. It's not easy to hear. By any means, but I don't think you can truly be confident in your abilities without being open to feedback. Whether or not you want to hear it or not, I think getting the honest feedback is what you need.
Yeah.
And being overly confident while only listening to the feedback in your own head is the ultimate echo chamber.
Ooh. Yes, it is. And we love that echo chamber, though, don't we?
I mean, it is good up in my echo chamber because you know why? It is a big fan of me.
And it always agrees with you.
Right?
Shocker.
Like,
it's just
there is no
the strangest thing.
There is no fight back. There is no Sandy, that's a bad idea, or like, no, I won't clean up my room. None of that. It is a party for me all the time. So, again, it's not always easy to hear.
Yeah.
And I'm a visual person.
Yeah.
So let me do this for you. Like, I have the ability to sing, right? But
I honestly don't think I knew that.
okay, well, let me finish my
okay. Sorry, jumped the gun.
Hold on, Tony. There's a reason why you don't know that.
Oh, got it.
But I have the ability to sing, but Critter has given me the feedback. I don't do it well.
Oh.
Okay.
Whoops.
So I am now confident that I should not join the praise team to sing on stage for others.
Okay.
Because in my echo chamber, I'm good. And I'm like, I need to be up there because I love worship and I love praising. So it's kind of, that feedback sometimes is hard to hear when I'm jamming out, and he's like, oh, San, not so good. Do you know, like, it's those moments where, okay, feedback always isn't easy, but it's a part of what we need to keep us in check.
Yeah.
Because echo chambers are great, but they're dangerous.
Yes.
Very dangerous.
Yeah. Well, the whole idea of not surrounding yourself with yes women or men to always agree with you. So we're talking about the mind within ourselves with the echo chamber, but also the confidants, the friends, the advisors, the people that you have in your life. Are they being willing and able to give you feedback and criticism? I think that for you to flat out say, like, you cannot be a great leader, you cannot be confident in your stuff if you are unwilling to receive feedback. Like,
Absolutely.
That's so true. Heavy truth, annoying truth to receive feedback. But leaders are learners. They're ever evolving, learning leaders. Like, that's who they are. And so for someone to say, I'm confident, but without receiving gut checks and criticisms and feedbacks, like, are they actually as good as they think they are?
Right.
Or as good as I think I am if I'm unwilling to?
Right.
So, no, I think that's very adequately and well said. I've heard a phrase that is, leaders should have a tough skin, but a soft heart. How do you relate to this in the conversation of humble confidence?
So, to know me is to know that I have a very soft heart. And I need tougher skin. I'll be honest. Somebody, just a couple of days ago, said to me, "You're a sensitive soul." And they're not wrong. I cry too easily. Like, the kids go off to school, I cry. They score a goal at soccer, I cry. I just have a soft heart. And it's what God blessed me with, and I think He did it for a reason.
Yeah.
So I also see that, and I know that He gave me that soft heart to be sensitive to and receptive to things He wants me to see and ways He wants me to serve and the way He wants me to love on people. But I also know I need tough skin. And being in a leadership role, you need it, but it's hard. right? It is hard to have tough skin, especially when you are putting in hours upon hours leading a team for an event, and then somebody comes with feedback and they're like, yeah, that didn't land right. It's like, oh, So somebody once told me, don't ask for feedback if you're truly not ready to hear what the other person has to say.
Yep.
And ever since that, I'm like, okay, well then, you know what? I'm never going to ask for feedback. But then that's just not realistic either.
Of course.
And when I stopped doing things for the sole purpose of recognition for myself, and I shifted to doing things to bring glory to our God, hearing feedback became easier.
Yeah.
Because it's like, the feedback isn't offending me, right? It's so we can serve God better, so we can glorify Him better. So that was huge for me, right? It doesn't matter if I'm serving here at Gateway or if I'm serving at church. It's God first, Sandi second. And when I realized that, then I was like, okay, like the tougher skin is coming and the feedback I can handle. So I don't think we can go without having some tough skin, but having a soft heart isn't a bad thing either.
No, not whatsoever. And I think that there is a strength, a beauty and a strength behind tough skin, soft hearts. Whereas with the soft heart, there hopefully is lenses of compassion and empathy and love and forgiveness, while tough skin has a bit of strength, confidence. I am not so swayed by people so easily, by what they say, by their opinions, and being able to stand your ground in conviction. So both of these are absolutely needed. And I think I would, if I had to land on one or the other of like where I probably need more tough skin myself as well at times, where I'm like, I can give people, like, we're all about grace in the economy of Jesus, which is beautiful. But sometimes I can give too much grace at times as a leader. And so, how do I shore up my tough skinness and live in that way? So it's a delicate balance. Never going to be perfect, but to pursue both of them is absolutely needed.
Yeah, I find myself in that situation currently at work.
Yeah.
Because I find my soft heart is speaking more than my tough skin, because I want the teachers to buy in, to work with me. To see that it's okay that they're getting feedback about their teaching. It's okay, but I'm allowing my tough skin to kind of take the wayside and just kind of doing whatever they need to appease them.
Yep.
So, what you just said is true. It's a good balance of both can go a long way.
Sure.
But sometimes things are easier said than done, and having that tough skin.
Way easier said than done. So therefore, we're going to move on.
Yeah.
How does living in the tension, because this question is so much easier, of course, how does living in the tension that living confidently in your abilities and personality could turn to cockiness? And how do you recognize when that's happening? How's that for a self-awareness question?
I'm telling you, these questions, I had a lot of come to Jesus moments with these questions. But when I read this one, your message, your sermon that you gave back in October rang in my ears like the loudest bell. And it was the message that I got out of it that you gave that day was, our motive will either display God's icon or demonstrate our ideolatry. And that day, I was just like, I felt like you were right here, and you were only talking to me, and you were like hitting me up against the head because, I was in the thick of planning Fall Fest at that time, and I was so busy being confident in what I could do for Fall Fest, how I could make Fall Fest awesome. And I wasn't worried about everything else, right? I was trying to prove that I could be a good planner for Gateway. But when I saw that message, I was like, you are lifting up yourself higher than you're lifting up God's icon, which is what is here at Gateway, which is what is important that day. But Another way in which I serve here at Gateway is I host once a month on the weekends. And this also spoke to me in that, we get our talking points, we write things up that we're going to say, and Corey and Johnny, they encourage us host, put a little personal touch in it. Being real, being humble, it goes a long way with reaching those. But a lot of times I found myself putting Sandi on a pedestal. Because sometimes when you get a mic, you're like, oh, I can do all the things, like you feel that power.
Yep.
So I found myself putting myself on a pedestal, and I needed to step back. And I needed to say, it is not about me. It is about God. It is about what God is doing in this church. Yeah. And that alone was humbling for me. Because more often than not, I wanted to say something that touched me that week, or how I was impacted. But is that going to reach everybody in the room? No, right? I'm like, so that altogether is just how I figured, like, knowing my abilities and my personalities, how it quickly could turn to cockiness if I let it.
Yep.
Because I had the power, not the power, but
No, but power can be accurate.
So, yeah.
Well, I appreciate that nod toward that sermon months and months ago to think through the idea of motive and how, like, I think, well, a common thread that's happened in these Marks of a Healthy Leader episodes has been the word motive. And so to know that really is a crucial, maybe one of the most crucial elements of pursuing healthiness is, why are we doing what we are doing? And for me, as a leader who has, I guess if I'm being honest, slight, like, above average self-esteem, like I don't wrestle with, like, low self-esteem usually. And I know that when I'm not careful, that confidence, that self-esteem can turn to cockiness, and it's keeping that in check, and keeping my motive in check, and keeping my humility in check. And I've definitely been humbled by a lot of people over the course of my life. And
you're not alone. Like, I think it's something we all deal with, and especially when you're in a leadership role, right? A lot of people, they look to you for decisions. They look to you for guidance. They look to you for what's coming next. And if your motive isn't right, it's obvious quick.
Sure.
It is obvious if, like, this is the Sandi parade, this is the Sandi train, get on or get off. Are we here to better ourselves for the kingdom, or are we just here to lift each other, lift me up? So motive is huge, and I think it can be seen pretty easily by those around us.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. Okay, so now, there could be some moments that you are living confidently in your abilities and your personality, and maybe someone accuses you of cockiness. You take some time, you think over it, you do the spiritual thing, you pray over it, and you discern that it is maybe not actually the case, that what someone was saying might not actually hold true to what you were saying. How does one live in the tension that you are ultimately discerning that you are not living in cockiness, but you could actually discern you're living in confidence? Slightly loaded question.
Very loaded.
How would you speak to that?
So, like I mentioned, I'm visual. So if you don't mind, I'm going to take a second, like you and I chatted about, and I'm going to differentiate between confident and cockiness.
Please, go for it.
So, because this really helped me. So but confident is, you're on a team, soccer team. We love soccer in our house. So being really good at scoring goals, right? Never missing a shot, but you know when to take the shot, and you know when not to take the shot for the betterment of your team. Confident.
Great.
Cockiness is no care for the opportunity, no care for the team, doing it whatever you can to show off yourself and your strength. You don't benefit those around you.
Yeah.
Two differences that really helped me understand.
Yep, very different.
Because I feel like sometimes we can intertwine the two, like confident cockiness, if you don't really see the difference. So that helped me. But if someone were to accuse me of being and I discerned otherwise, I would need to realize that their feelings aren't invalid.
aren't invalid.
Yeah.
Okay.
So whether or not I agree, their perception of me is theirs, right? So I would need to this is where humility ties in. And I would need to say, okay, whether or not I agree with them, this is what they're perceiving of me.
Yeah.
And maybe I don't want that to be the perception. Maybe I don't want people to think I'm cocky because I don't think I am.
Yeah.
So it's about praying. It's about having that hard conversation with them of, can you tell me what you're seeing so I can better understand how I'm coming off to others?
Yeah.
Because, like when you're up on stage or when I'm up there hosting or when you're in a leadership role, it is so easy for people to look at you and say, oh, like she looks so confident or she's so cocky in what she's saying, when really inside we're probably just a nervous wreck or something, right? And it's giving off a perception that may not be true. So I think having that difficult conversation and saying, tell me what you see. Help me to better understand what I'm giving off so I can try to evaluate that.
Yeah.
And I think as hard as that is and as humbling as that is, I think it's important.
Yep.
Because to sit down and say to somebody, hey, Tony, I know you notice this about me. Can you tell me why? What do you see about me that's hard?
It's incredibly.
Like,
yes.
That is, I'm not going to lie, like that's hard, but I think it's key.
Yeah.
Especially in our leadership roles.
Yeah. And I couldn't agree more with everything you just said. And also, I want to compound on that to say that there are also some moments where someone is coming at you with your character, saying, oh, maybe you're being too prideful or you're being too cocky, and they're not someone that you know that well.
Right.
And so maybe you take that to a mentor, to a close friend, where I have these moments with some of my colleagues and some of my friends and my wife, and I say, okay, hey, Scripture says that we're called to speak in grace and truth. Well, right now, grace goes out the window. I want an all-truth moment. This is what someone said. Can you please speak into it? Would you agree or disagree?
Absolutely.
And due to my level of self-confidence, my level of charisma and extroversion that I bring, there's been quite a few moments in my life where someone has said to me, Tony, I think you're being a little cocky, or I think you're being a little prideful. And there has been moments that have been like, you are absolutely right. And I am so sorry. However, there are some other moments that I've taken it to a very trusted person and said, hey, please do not hold back. Please tell me, would you say there is accuracy to this statement? And there's been moments that the person has said, I don't think so, because I know you, and I know your heart, and I know your motive. And that person just doesn't see the full context, doesn't see the whole picture, doesn't know you as well, so on and so forth. Now, you need to keep a right heart posture in this moment, because you could, in your own mind, or literally go back to them and say, yeah, take it, you're wrong.
Echo chamber.
Echo chamber, right. Please don't ever do that.
Right.
But there does need to be a level of willingness, of confidence in yourself, of like, oh, no, I don't think that's true of me.
Right.
And to live in that and not let other people's opinions of you dictate you and drive you towards this unhealth or this lack of confidence.
I don't think there's anything wrong with if it's the situation where it's someone who may not know you is saying, this is my heart. Like, this is where I'm coming from. Yeah. Because if you are a passionate person and you are diving in and you're doing things for the right reason, like, I think there's merit in that.
Yeah.
Even if it comes off a little cocky, if your heart is in the right place and you do that self-check with yourself and with somebody trusted, and you find, no, like, I'm just confident in what I'm doing, I think that's okay.
Yeah.
You know?
I would fully stand by that and agree. But again, that's coming from a person that's part of my story that I've wrestled with, people calling me out. So I'm hoping and praying it's not a way for me just to band-aid my own issue and be like, no, I'm actually not wrong when I could be. So I again, constantly trying to have people speak with radical candor in my life. Otherwise, I'd be a mess and a half and some in terms of my pride and my cockiness. So only by the grace of God that is not a raging problem, and yet people would listening in, say, no, it's still a raging problem. I'm like, okay, great.
But we all love each other well enough to have that hard, real conversation.
Yes.
Because if we can't, then.
So if you are listening right now and you think, Tony, you are a raging, cocky person, please come and talk to me. I would really love to know that.
But do it with kindness, grace, and love.
But do it with kindness and, yeah, thank you. Yep. Okay, so let's continue in this train because it's good. It's difficult, but it's good. So we want to pose a question. And we're actually going to do something here that we've never done before, where these questions are carved out for me to talk with Sandi, the guest, about. But Sandi's actually going to volley this question back to me, and so she's going to ask it, and then I'm going to respond. So you are now the person in charge.
I am so excited for that.
Handle it well.
I got this. It is easy to think about pride as confidence turning to cockiness due to high self-esteem, but how is too low of self-esteem a false sense of humility and actually also pride?
So this is something that whoever's listening, whoever's watching, Sandi, even you can disagree with me. Here's my understanding of pride. Stereotypically, it's very easy for someone to think of pride as too high self-esteem. I'm cocky. I am better than I actually am, kind of a mentality, and that's true. That is what pride is, thinking I am all that in a bag of chips. While as I think that there is a level of pride that we neglect, and that level of pride is on the swinging the pendulum to the too low of self-esteem, where someone thinks I am nothing, and I don't have a confidence whatsoever in my giftings and my abilities, and I can't amount to anything and measure up to anything, and I'm just going to pass off stuff to people all the time. So something that you slightly alluded to actually moments ago, and I would also submit to us that this is also pride. Pride is a false realization of self, an inaccurate view of self. So you can inaccurately view yourself that I am too good. You can also inaccurately view yourself as I am too bad. And so for the individual who would say, "Oh, I don't really deal with pride," and they're the individual who is always cowering, and they are always they don't speak up for themselves well, and they always feel the need to apologize all the time, and they always feel the need to they don't feel like they can live confidently within their giftings. Now, can I just also say, as like a mini timeout, there are experiences heap a lot of weight on an individual. So if there is trauma, and if there is trials and experiences that have weighted them down, those are real. And so someone may not have a level of self-confidence due to something that someone's done to them, or a lived experience. So I want to validate that through and through. That doesn't explicitly mean someone has pride, but to say that someone who is always not living in someone who is living in a moment of, I'm nothing, and I can't amount to anything, or I don't have the ability, and comparing themselves all the time to other people, that person also would have pride because it's a false view of self and the way that God sees them. So someone who is, in short, someone who sees himself with too high self-esteem is not seeing themselves as a sinful being that God like says you are in Scripture, that you need to humble yourself. And someone who is thinking too lowly of themselves is not seeing them as the jewel and the beauty and the gift they are meant to be to mankind and to God as a child of God, and they're not seeing themselves accurately in that way, which is also pride. So therein lies my 2 cents on the matter.
And I am so glad we flipped scripts and allowed you to say that, because you taught me about pride here. Because I was that person, when I see the word pride, I immediately thought, it's somebody who loves themselves, somebody who's super confident. I never once thought of it as someone with too low self-esteem. But you're right, it is the way we view ourselves. And so that was like a light bulb for me. So I appreciate your take on it. And I don't disagree with you, even though you said I could. I don't disagree with you. I think there's a lot to be said in that, because the way in which we view ourselves is very real. And I think the way in which we view ourselves is hard in the society in which we are in. You know, like you mentioned comparison, and you mentioned just the world. It's hard to have a good view of yourself. And there are moments where we're down in the dumps or we're too high. But being in the middle is hard. But also remembering that we are worthy, right? Like God made the ultimate sacrifice because he felt as though we were worthy. And we need to remember that. But we can't when we're here. Or when we're here.
It's that ability to live in realization of my brokenness, but also I'm not stuck in brokenness. I'm called towards excellence. And I'm living in that confidence of my excellence, but I'm not living too excellently, therefore, or not thinking too excellently, because therefore I'm going to become cocky, prideful. And then, so
it's constant battle.
Constant. It goes all over the place. And, but you said being able to live in the middle is somewhere the necessity and the need. So I'm not asking you to give us the silver bullet of an answer here, but what are some ideas or some practices that ensure self-worth remains balanced in the middle? That's not dipping too low, or it's not dipping too or raising too high.
If I had the silver bullet, golden bullet, I feel like I'd be floating in heaven.
Heck yeah, you would be.
Right? But I don't. So I'm just going to tell you what I do.
Well,
and
I guess that'll work.
I'm sorry to disappoint y'all. I truly believe it is finding a tribe of people that you can trust and know are in your corner. And you touched on this earlier. It's just knowing that those are the people that can knock you down a peg or lift you up. And for me personally, I consider myself extremely lucky to have the husband that I do. He told me I can't sing, for goodness sake. And to have the church family that we do. Because it's more than just your spouse. It is knowing that there are people within your church who are on the same level that you are, who love Jesus the way you do, and who can be like, hey, Sandi, like, you're a little bit out of check. Because there have been times where people here at Gateway have told me, Sandi's too loud. Like, you are letting your version of Sandi be way too loud. And then on the flip side, I've also heard, you're not letting Sandi be enough. So it's kind of like having those people that you know are going to tell you the hard truth. Even when you don't want to hear it. And so it's a constant battle, right? I am constantly trying to keep my self-worth in check. I am constantly trying to figure things out. And it took me way too long to realize this. But my self-worth does not rely on the material items here on this earth. But I truly believe that my self-worth only matters in the eyes of our Heavenly Father. And that alone should be enough of a self-check for me. Going back to like what you said about our motives and our idolatry. What am I showing the world's important? What am I showing God's important? You know? So that for me, and just spending that time in prayer, like showing me what do I need to see? What do I need to know? That's how I try to keep it.
And to have continual self-checks and self-examines in that way is deeply needed. Again, easier said than done. We've mentioned that before, but it is very, very needed. How would you say how does a healthy humility allow you to live out your authentic self? Almost like the examine literally just said this. Like, how does a healthy humility allow you to live in your authentic self, as well as an accurate acknowledgement of where your strengths end and where your weaknesses begin?
So, track with me here.
Tracking.
Pastor Scott talked, I think it was 2 weeks ago now, about shape and abilities. Shape is a big thing here at Gateway. Figuring out your shape, figuring out what makes you you, what makes you tick, what areas you can serve. That's big. But Pastor Scott, when he said, you can take that shape assessment, but it's man-made. Right? So let's be real, it's man-made.
For sure.
So we can put whatever stock we want into that, but what we need to do is know and believe that the abilities are the ones that have been given to us by God. When we stop and say, okay, I've been given the ability to love to organize because God said we need organizers in this world. You know, they're given to me by God, and it's what I choose to do with them. And it's also knowing that we all have different abilities.
Yep.
And it helps me to realize that my strengths end here, but Tony, yours begin here. Yep. And we need to lean on each other.
Yep.
And learning that our spiritual gifts are meant to help others, not ourselves. Helps with humility, because I'm meant to help you and you're meant to help me.
Yep.
And when we can take the time to see we're all not here to harm each other, we're all not here to compete with each other, but we're all here to lean on and help each other, I think we can go a long way. Because that's why God has given us the abilities he's given us.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you may be great at speaking and giving the message from God, where I may not be. But like, we can lean on each other with certain strengths and weaknesses that we have. Yep. So I think that's key.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more to the concept of our shape and having a self-awareness of here's what I'm good at and here is what I am not good at.
Right.
And I, too, would say that you outed your voice. I have an okay voice. I don't have a great voice. I'm not going to go up on stage. Can I sort of carry a tune-ish? Maybe not. I don't know. But I'm not going to do that. That's not my shape. Like,
Right.
On the regular, on a one-off, could I, if called upon? Yes. But it's not going to be my regular fit.
Right.
While as communicating the word of God, I think is. I hope it is. Otherwise,
Right.
I'm in an awkward profession if that's not the case. But to have an awareness, and yes, shape assessment itself is man-made, or spiritual gifts assessment is man-made. The DISC leadership profile, that's man-made. But to not throw out the baby with the bathwater, those things still have a level of helpfulness to
Absolutely.
them. Not something to take on as absolute truth, dictating your life, but they still can be good and helpful. But to know from Scripture who God says you are and your giftings and your talents, and to search it out from other people who have the Holy Spirit in them to speak truth over your life, can be really a really good thing to do. And
when we started here at Gateway, we did the shape, Critter and I, the shape assessment, and it told us like our different shapes. And afterwards I was like, okay, what do we do? What do we do with our shape? What do I do with these abilities? And it was over time of prayer and listening to God and listening to his nudges that we found out where he wanted us to use those abilities.
It's good.
So I think that's key too. It's okay, use the shape assessment. Find out where you're good. Find out your abilities and what makes you tick and where you find joy. But it's taking the time to give it to God and let him give to you what he wants.
Yeah.
That's where you're going to find that money.
Yeah, you don't force it.
You can.
Yeah, you find that wait on that sweet spot from God.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's really, really good. As we cover a lot of ground through humble and confidence, I like to ask, do you have any leadership hacks or practical tips or tricks or, I don't know, anything that could help someone if they say, man, I really do want to pursue humble confidence more. What would you say? Anything that comes to mind?
I mean, first and foremost, never alter your love of Jesus, right? You got to allow his light to shine through in all things that you do. Like you and I just said, do those self-checks with God. Listen.
Yeah.
One of my other things is be an active listener to the people around you, but let's be real. Be an active listener to God. When he speaks, he's pretty loud. So like, if you're going to try to ignore him, he's just going to continue to say the same thing over and over again. So for me, that's key. Listen to what God is saying, but most importantly, ask him for feedback. God, what are you trying to tell me? Show me where you want me to go. So I think those are key, and be real. Just being in humble confidence is being real. Hey, I messed up. Like, sure, I can be, like, how many times twice I've been up on stage and I've just forgotten what I needed to say as a host. And I'm like, hey guys, I'm sorry. But it's in those moments that everybody sees, well, you're a real human too. Just having those moments of humility. So,
And I also have my share of mishaps from a stage, and accidentally saying something I should have said, to having something on a slide that I shouldn't. Maybe it was a typo, sort of. And it happens. And we're human.
Absolutely.
In one sense, I think sometimes we need to not take ourselves too seriously, and just like, we're human, we make mistakes. So maybe laugh about it, maybe don't laugh if it's not appropriate to laugh, but but own up to it and move on.
Absolutely.
While also the ability to receive that feedback from someone is super necessary. So actively listening to what someone is saying to you, and read between the lines of what they're saying. And hopefully someone's going to speak with radical candor if they have that space in your life to do it. But if they don't have that closeness of relationship, and they try to say something, but they really are trying to say something more intentional, they just don't have the relationship with you to say it, maybe lean in, like in your own mind, and try, okay, what were they really trying to say? Right. And so just another thought of how we're trying to be humble, actively listening, being real. Those are all really, really good things. As we land the plane and we finish this up, do you have any final words of wisdom, advice, caution, maybe a book resource, or something of any kind that you would give to our listeners as we conclude our time together?
When thinking of humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less.
Yep, it's really good.
And I think that's key, because it's where that less is, right? So I think that's important. And just don't take for granted what God has chosen for us. It's easy to do. It's easy to take for granted all the things that he's given us, but let's not, because if we really dial into that and the nudges and the calls, think of the awesomeness we could do if we all leaned on each other. And the last thing is, we always tell our kids this, is to go out and be the light, because you truly never know the kind of difference you're going to make.
Yeah.
So just be that beacon of light, be the light for Jesus every day, and listen. Yeah. Listen well to what God is telling you. And there's nothing wrong with being confident in what God has given you.
Yep.
But also be able to do those self-checks to have that humility as well.
Yep. Well, even telling your kids, be the light. Like, you're in a roundabout way, you're telling them, go be confident. Like, go represent Jesus well.
Absolutely.
Do, like, shoulders up. Let's go after it.
Right.
So I think that, again, we need to have this. We are beating the gong over and over again here. But just to say that both are needed. Humility, confidence. You cannot have one without the other in a healthy leader economy and in a God-honoring economy as well. So I love that line, go be the light to your kids. And so as someone who stepped into this space, thank you for being a light right here, right now. In inviting a guest to talk about humble confidence, let me say this oddly. I know that you are not a perfect person. I know that you can have a cocky mentality, or I know that you are imperfect and broken and messed up and selfish and why? Because you're like me. We're all broken, prideful, jacked up people. So I didn't ask you to come onto this podcast because I think that you have humility all figured out perfectly.
Well, good, because I don't.
I invited you because here's the thing. I think that from my observation of your life, which I know that my observation is my perception, therefore it's not fully true, but my perception of the way that I see you live your life with Critter and your kids at Gateway in the leadership capacities that you do, is that there are threads of humble confidence in imperfection, but doing so, striving towards doing it with excellence and picking yourself back up and living with grace and living with truth. Being an ever-evolving, learning leader is what I can sense as part of your DNA.
Thank you.
And that's why I wanted you to talk
Well,
on this
thank
topic.
you. I appreciate it, and I love you for it. So.
Well, this has been fun. So, friend, thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for the stepping into the tension, the paradox, and I hope that our listeners and I know myself are I'm better because of it and because of this dialogue. So just thank you so much. And if you are enjoying what you've been listening to, you've been liking what you're hearing, if you've been enjoying the 5 marks of a healthy leader, and you want to continue in this journey of learning about developing your skills in the art and science of influential capacity, would you hit the share button? Would you hit the like button wherever you consume the content? And we hope that we'll see you next time as we continue to explore the art and science of developing leader capacity. Catch you next time.